Today we'll be learning CSAP, foundational CSAP with Microsoft especially. And you can find this course on Free Code Camp. This video is actually going to be about this course itself. So you don't need to read through all of this. You can simply follow along. So to get started, you don't need anything. You can get started today. And now is the good time. So one neat thing about this course is that you do receive some kind of certificate with your name on it and also the Microsoft logo. So you can flex. So this is basically a foundational CSAP certificate that shows you that you can write basic CSAP code and you have basic understanding of writing code essentially. So let's get started. How do you get started? Go to the link in the description below. And when you're in this website, you see this sign in button, you click there and you sign in using one of your accounts. Now I recommend making a GitHub account because you'll need this when you become a programmer. So if you have a GitHub account, sign in using that. You can use Google or you can use Apple, or you can also use email address. So once you do that, click on this option over here, menu, and turn on night mode. So please do that before you read this. White background is not a very pleasant experience for the eyes. So there's a lot of chapters in this course, and every chapter have different topics. 7 topics here, 8 topics here, and each of these topics you need to complete, and every topic is somewhat different from each other. For example, this is about writing your first code, this is about using variables and stuff, and every topic comes with a little bit of reading, so I advise you to do the reading and also take a look at the examples. I also advise you to complete the assignments and quizzes because those are very necessary to test your knowledge out. Writing code is not about actually studying and memorizing answers. So to do this, to get started, click on the first topic of the first chapter and you should see a link. Now every topic comes with this Microsoft link that you need to click on, and you can also log in to Microsoft right here, and I advise you to do that because every module that you complete, every unit that you complete, you receive a trophy, and that trophy, on the basis of the trophy, you're allowed to take an exam and you get a certificate. Once you're at the Microsoft's website, you simply click on the start button and you just read through the introduction and hit continue and do a little bit of more reading. And on the right side, you get a code editor. That's actually neat. You don't need to install anything. You can get started in writing code ASAP, right from the first chapter. So why CSAP? Well, it's the language that I know. As a pretty versatile language, you can use it to create video games and also desktop and mobile applications, web apps too, but I don't create that. I mainly create video games. But how do you write such applications? How do you create video games? Well, you write code. Codes are basically instructions that you give to the computer. For example, you may instruct the computer to ask your name. Computer, ask my name. Computer, say my name. But this is not how you write code. It's just how writing code works. You write line by line and the computer runs it one instruction at a time. In this chapter, you'll learn how to write your first code. And write this code down. Type in console with the C capital, dot right line, the W capital and the L capital, and open up a parenthesis and type in double quotes, hello world. All right. And once you type in that, you can click on run and you should see the output here. Hello world. Oh, nice. So this piece of instruction will output something on the screen. That's neat. Now you may be tempted to simply copy this and then paste it. I mean, you can do that, but I wouldn't advise doing that. I would advise you to type it because that's how you remember. But over time, you don't need to actually remember each and every spelling or the syntax. You can simply type in the first few words, the first few letters, cons, and then it will show you all the different suggestions. So for instance, I want to type in console, so I'll just press on tab and it will select the first option, dot WRIT, and there's two options here. I want the right line, so I'll use the arrow keys to go select the second one, and you can press in tab, and you can open a parenthesis, and it's gonna close it automatically for you. And then hello world. See, this is actually a neat tool of Microsoft VS Code, Microsoft Visual Studio Code, and that's basically running on the browser itself. You don't need to install anything right now. What if you write lowercase c? Let's hit run. Error. It's going to say 1,1. So what does this 1,1 mean? It means at line, comma, letter. Okay. So at line 1, the first letter, there's an error. So you will know that there's an error over here. You made a mistake over here. And it says small console does not exist in the current context. So apparently, C# does not understand the difference between a capital console and a small console. So that means that C# is a very case sensitive language. You cannot mix up lowercase and uppercase letters. Similarly, what if you had typed in a single quotes and hello world? Okay, it says too many characters in a character literal. So that means again in line 1 and in 19 letters, so let's count 19. So you can see it highlighted with a red line over here that the error is over here, and this error is actually due to data type issue, and you'll learn more about that in the next chapter. But for now, let's just try to fix this error. So we know that there should be double quotes here and there should be double quotes here. Good. So what if you miss this semicolon? Well, just like how full stop works in an English language to end a sentence, semicolon works the same way in programming, in C# especially, to end a statement or an instruction. So the computer will know that this is one instruction. So what if you were to copy this and then paste it at the same line, in the same line? Then the computer would understand that up to this semicolon, this is the first instruction, and after the semicolon and up to the second one, this is the second instruction, and this is the third instruction. So you don't need to actually write it in the different line. The computer will remove all the extra lines and spaces. Now, from now on, I will not be using the term computer. I will use the term compiler. And what it does is basically that your computer cannot understand this English language. It only understands in the basis of ones and zeros. 1 0 1 0. That is electrical switches being on and off. So how do we get from a console dot blah 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 to ones and zeros? Well, in the middle sits a compiler, and the compiler takes in your code that's written in English and whatnot, and it turns out a machine code that's basically written in ones and zeros, which is called binary, so that the computer can understand what you've written. The computer does not understand that's why you have to press run every time you want to see the output. The compiler takes in your written code and it converts it into computer understandable form, runs it, and then gives you the result. Okay, so you also want to write comments in code. For example, okay, this code is nice, it works, but I don't want to remove this code. I may need this for future. So instead of simply deleting it, what you can do is you can type in 2 forward slashes, and that will sort of turn this instruction into a green instruction. That will turn this into green, and that means that this is actually marked as a comment. So this whole line is marked as a comment. Anything that you write after these 2 front slashes will be marked as a comment in the compiler, and the compiler will basically ignore all of this when trying to build the binary code. So this will only remain in your source code that is written in C#, but it won't be in your, that binary file that the computer actually runs. So there's actually a different way to output. As you can see, when we tried to type in write, we saw that there was another command called write. So what's the difference between a write and a write line? So it typed in hello. So it outputted hello, just like here, and it outputted a space, and it also outputted world. What if we had written right line over here? Hello, and then the next line, and then world. Okay, so the difference between right and right line is that right line, when it shows the message, it will add a new extra line. So what, it will move the cursor down here. Suppose this is the output screen, right? And I'm the computer, doing the output. So I type in hello first, and then, oh, so this hello was from right line. So I would add a new line at the end of this message. And then I would say, oh, there's a space there. Let's add a space. And then, oh, this was a right line. So I'd go to the next line. So go ahead and learn, read through these. This is just simple theory about programming. Why you have to write code like this, and why not ones and zeros, and what is syntax. Well, syntax is basically grammatical rules for programming. In English, you have to follow rules so that it makes sense, and so that the language you've written is correct. Same as that, if you mess up the syntax, the compiler will not understand what you've written, and it will just throw an error. Let us dissect this code. Let's take a look at this hello world. What is this? This is called a literal string. What is literal? The value is literally there. Just understand it that way. It's a constant. Hello world is going to remain constant. The meaning of this is going to remain constant. This H is not suddenly going to turn into an M, and it's going to say mellow world. So it's called a literal string. And what is a literal string? Well, literal string are basically made up of literal characters. And what's the difference between a string and a character? Well, strings are enclosed in double quotes, whilst characters are enclosed in single quotes. String can hold many data. You can type in anything in string. So this is a string. I can make it very long. However, you can't make characters very long. They are inherently one character long. So you can hold A, B, C, D, E, F, G, J, 1, 2, added, dollar, hash, dollar. So basically any alphanumeric characters. Only single one. And this is why when you typed in console right line and in single quotes hello world, so basically when you typed in hello world in single quotes, you saw too many characters in a character literal. See, because a character literal can only support one character. So if you type in only H, it is going to output H now. So what is this part now? We know that inside we typed in a string or a character, but what is this right line? Let's remove this console for now. Let's just understand this part. Well, this is called a method. And how do you understand what is a method? You could also call this function. Basically something that calls a piece of code. So how do you distinguish methods? Well, a method will always have something, a name given to it, a method name, and then that is usually followed by a parenthesis and then semicolon. So this is called calling a method. So you're using some piece of code, and if you're making a method, that's a whole other story. We'll see about that in the upcoming chapters, but just know that you are calling a method, you are invoking a method. For example, the method is right line here. Right is also a method. So remember, what if we needed to output anything, you could type anything inside the parenthesis. Well, anything you type into the parenthesis is called whatever you pass in. So whatever you type inside the parenthesis, it is an argument, and what the argument does is that whenever you call this piece of code called right, the argument is passed to the right. So so the right actually has some kind of code, somewhere inside the compiler, and then when you call the write code, it's going to run this piece of code in the compiler, but it will also receive an additional information. It will also receive some parameters, or it will receive the argument that you passed. Okay, so now that we know that this is a method and this is an argument, and the argument is a literal string that was passed, and you also need a semicolon. Let's take a look at what is the console and what is the function of the dot. So console is a class here. And what is a class? Well, class is a way, simply speaking, class is a way to define a type of something. Okay, just understand it as that way. So you got different objects and you want to group them together. So there should be something common between all of the objects that you're grouping together. For example, you got 5 friends. So what's common among them is that they're all humans. See, so human is a class over here. Same like that. Console is a class over here, and you could have different consoles. For example, this output could be console, this CMD could be console, and something else. And what's common among all of them are their black screen, and there's a prompt there, and you get a text-based input and output, basically. So we now know that it's a class. Console is a class, and what a class is. Each class can have its own functions or methods inside it. Okay, and these are called members of the class, or specifically speaking, member functions or member methods. So write line, actually you cannot use it just like that without the console class. You need to use the write line from the console class, and to do that you need to access it from the console class. And the way to access it is by using an access operator. You see, it's written right here, member access operator, and that's the dot. So whenever you type in console, so that's the class, you type in dot, now you're accessing the members of the console class. And as you can see, the code editor has actually shown us all the different types of members that's inside the console class. For example, write line, there's also some kind of window title, window size, window position, and stuff like that. There's also something called beep. Interesting. Let's see, this is a function. Let's try calling this. Okay, nothing happened. Let's ignore that. Just got curious there. Console dot, and yes, you can see when you type in dot at the end there's a write line. We can use that function and you can use it. Understand the flow of execution. CPU will try to execute one instruction at a time, and some instruction may be pretty heavy. So if you, for example, we're running at like line 7, and this was a very heavy function or heavy instruction, then your program would actually get stuck here and hang up. And yeah, so that's the basis of how stuff works. So once you do that, go ahead and check your knowledge and solve this. If you didn't solve it, go back, read again, and come back. So when you're done, there we go. Now, after finishing, the first chapters, you'll get a challenge. Okay, write code in the .NET editor to display 2 messages. You need to display these 2 messages writing code. Yeah, just so first thing first, just remove everything. I'll just click this clear button over here. And your goal is to somehow get this type of output over here. How do we remove this actually? Because we just create run. Yeah, we need to get this output out there, and I have taught you 2 different ways to get the output. However, you need to make sure that these 2 output will be on different lines. That's the requirement really. And using there's 2 functions that I've taught you, use those 2. There's 2 methods that I have previously mentioned. Only one of them is correct. So pause the video, try it yourself, and if you got stuck, then resume the video. If you're watching this, I'll assume that you got stuck and that you need a little bit of help. And that's fine, because this was your first assignment after all. So how do we write something on the screen? Well, console dot write or write line, but which one do we use? Well, we do know the fact that write basically outputs everything on a single line, and write line outputs it on the current line, and then whatever you output next time would be outputted on the second line. So we basically do console.write line, and then we type in this is the first line, and console.write line, this is the second line. Okay. And yeah, if we hit run, it should work. And this is how you solve this assignment. Once you do that, click on continue. And you also do get a solution here at the end. So you don't actually have to watch my video, but keep watching, maybe you'll understand something. So knowledge check. So you get 3 quizzes at the end. Make sure you solve these quizzes by yourself. And yeah. So pause the video, solve it yourself, and then come back to check your answers. Okay, so I'll assume that you have completed this quiz or you got stuck in some of them. Just try, clicking on some answers. So let's see. What is the primary job of compiler? Well, we've understand that compiler takes in your code written in some language and converts it into machine form. So there you go. Primarily converts your code into an executable format that the computer can understand. Yeah. Compiler does not execute your code. Computer executes your code. And compiler primarily locates spelling mistakes in your code. I mean, it does not actually locate spelling mistake, only errors. So yeah. So which of the following statement is true about CSAP? CSAP is case sensitive. Console is a method and write line is a class. No, that is definitely not something we just discussed. You can use double quotation marks to create a literal string. Yes, that is correct. Case insensitive? No, that's not correct, because even getting the console C lowercase would result in an error. So this is not the answer. This is also not the answer, obviously. This is the answer. So what is wrong with this line of code? Console.write line. So the class is correct. The dot is correct. The function method name is correct. And what is wrong with me? So the string is also correct. Also correct is that the string is inside the parentheses. So that's also correct. And we are missing something here. What are we missing? So we know that this should not be in row case. We know that this is correct. So let's mark that off. The string should use single quotes. Obviously not, because a string will always use double quotes. A character will use single quote. So it's missing a semicolon at the end. And there you go. You get XP. Make sure you sign in and save your progress, because you will not receive trophy in your account. And you need those trophies to get the exam. All right, so when you come back, you continue and you're done, and you hit this unlock achievement here. And once you do that, you will unlock an achievement. You'll go back to the same page, or I think you'll move on to the next unit. You just close it and come back to free code camp, and it will ask you the same question over here, just a single one, and you just answer it and check your answer. Boom. Once you do that, you hit go to next challenge. Yes. In this chapter, we will be taking a look at different types of data, variables, and literal values. So what is a literal value? A literal value means literally a value, a constant value that does not change. For example, it can be a character literal, which is in the single quotes A. This is a character literal. This is also a literal value, and same as this. All alphanumeric values. There are also different types of data types. These are character literals, constants. There are string literals, constants. And there are number literals. Now, in number literals, there are different types of numbers. There are integers, which are also known as int in C sharp. In C sharp, they are also known as int. These are any numbers, but they are not enclosed by any type of single quote or double quotes. So they are directly written 1, 2, 3, 69, 69420, 66, and so on. So the character literal is called char in C sharp. The string literal is called string in C sharp. Char is the data type of character literal, and string is the data type of string literal. There are also numbers, number literals, they're constants, and there may be int, float. The simplest one would be the integer. The simplest one would be the integers, and these are denoted by simple numbers. For example, 1, 2, 0, 69, 69420, and 666, and so on. The next one is called a floating point number, and this is denoted by float in C sharp. A floating point number, or a float, is usually a number which has a decimal place with a point, and then floating point numbers are numbers that contain a decimal. For example, 3.14, 6.9, 6.66. Similarly, there's another thing called double, which is also known as double in C sharp. And these are just floating point numbers, but these have a longer range of precision. So floating point stores up to 6 to 9 digits after the point mark, and double stores up to 15 digits, so it can be pretty long. And the next one is called a decimal, which is denoted by decimal, and it can store a very long, precise number. For example, it can be about 30 digits long, so that's quite long. And this is usually used for really sensitive calculations. These are used for sensitive calculations, but you also want to save memory, and they're not so important. And these are usually used for exact fractional values. For example, 1.5, 2.3, and so on. So these are all number literals, and these all contain decimal point with varying degree of precision. But how do you differentiate between these? So here I have typed down all of the different literal types and then also tried to output them onto the screen. So the first one would be a string literal, and you can see that it's denoted by double quotes. This one is denoted by a single quote, and there's only a one character inside, so that is going to be a char literal. And this one is going to be a number literal, so it's going to be int. And this one is going to be a decimal literal. However, this one is also a decimal literal. This one is also a decimal literal. But there are different types of decimal literals. Okay, there's float, there's double, and there's decimal itself. But how do you distinguish between them? Like, all of these are numbers with decimal points in between them. How do you differentiate between them? Surely it's not going to be according to how many numbers you got after the decimal place, because you can still treat this as a float, or you can still treat this as a decimal. So the way you do that is by telling the compiler that this is a float, and to do that, what you do is you put in a suffix. You add in a suffix f for float. Similarly, for double, you don't add anything. So if you write a number with a decimal place, then it will automatically consider it as a double. And if you want this long text to be considered as a decimal, then you just add an m at the end. And if we hit run, we can see that we are getting correct output. However, see, if I try to make this a float and try to run it, you see I lose a little bit of precision. It's going to go up to this point, and then so what it's going to do is it's going to round that number down. So this is how you lose precision, basically. So always use correct data types when you need it. And these two, so this is going to be float, going to be double, and this is going to be decimal. Now these two, called true and false, are actually interesting. These are called bools, or boolean to be full form, but these are called bool in C#. And the unique thing about bool is that it can only be true or false. Now note that there is no double quotes enclosing these words, nor that these start with a uppercase letter. Remember, C# is a case sensitive language, so it's not the same as a small t and a capital T. If I try to type in a capital T, then it is going to consider this as some kind of variable, and it's going to say the name true does not exist because we haven't. And speaking of variables, what is a variable? This is a literal string. 1, 2, 3. These are hard-coded values, so if you use them in the program, they're going to stay same. 1 is still 1, 2 is still 2. Okay, hello is still hello everywhere. It is not going to suddenly turn into mellow. Okay, it is a constant, it is a hard-coded value, and sometimes you don't want these. I mean, you would use this if you want to say welcome, but what if you want to say welcome the name of the user in a program, for example? Then this is where you use variables. Suppose in mathematics, when you're trying to solve a problem and you don't know the value of something, then you just let the value. For example, let the unknown value be x, right? You used to do that all the time in mathematics. We are going to do the same in C#. For example, we know that our name is Ram, but what if we don't know the name of the person was Ram? We would say let the name of the person be name. Okay, so we can do the same here in C#, but there's a rule that you need to follow. And first thing, let's take a look, is the variable naming rules. First thing first, that variable names cannot start with any of the special characters, nor it can start with any of the numbers. However, it can start with underscores. Okay, and then you can type in a pretty long variable name. For example, first name, last name, the name, the age, or whatever. But you can't have spaces between these two. You can have an underscore to separate them, but you cannot have spaces between the names of the variable. Variables should not be also C# keywords. For example, you can't have a variable name console because it's already a C# instruction. Okay, you can't have a variable name bool. You can have a variable type of bool, but you can't have a variable name of bool. Naming conventions. Now, conventions are, generally accepted practices by programmers, but these are not strict rules that you need to follow, or else your program wouldn't run. These are solely for, someone that will read your code, or even for you, generally accepted way of writing it. Variable names should use camel case. And what is camel case? Well, camel case is when you separate two words when you start with a lowercase letter. For example, if I need to write in first name, I would start the variable name with a lowercase letter first, and then when the next word comes up, I will write the next word's first letter in uppercase, like this. The age of the person. See, instead of using spaces, you would use camel case. And don't try to start it with underscore, because there is a special meaning for developers. Someone reading your code might have a misunderstanding if you put underscore randomly. So variable name should be descriptive. So suppose if your variable holds a name, you should type in full name. If it's only holding the first name, and so on. Basically description of the type of value that it will hold. And it should not include the type of data. Now back then people used to type in str name, and the reason why they did that was to tell someone reading the code that name is a string. But nowadays you don't need to worry about that, because you can't really mix data types right now, and I'll show you why in the moment. So we know the actual rules to be followed and conventions. Now let's apply these rules and conventions to make our variable. So we need to make a variable of a string type, data type, and that will hold a name of a person. Okay, to do that, you simply follow this syntax: data type and then name of the variable, and then followed by a semicolon, because remember, instructions are ended with a semicolon. This is also an instruction. This is going to instruct the computer to say, oh, I need this variable and make this variable of this type so that it will hold the data of this type. Okay. We have different data types: string, char, bool, int, float, double, decimal, and so on. There are other different data types, but these are the fundamental ones that you'll be using basically. So for now, let's just use string because we need to store the name of the person. And as for the name of the variable, first we need to follow the rules. And then after following the rules, let's look at the convention. So the function would be, and there we go, full name. This is how you create a variable basically. And these are comments because they have turned green and they won't be included in the code execution, so the compiler will ignore these. Okay, so technical term for the names of anything would be called identifiers. Names of variables, identifiers. And identifiers are usually created by the user itself, or they're already inside the program. And here are some examples of different data types. Variables have different data types. So this will store a character, this will store a number, a whole number, and this will store a very, very precise decimal fraction point, and this will store true or false value. Now, you know how to create a variable like this, right? So what you are actually doing in here is called declaring a variable. You are declaring a variable called user option with a data type of char. You are declaring a variable game score with a type int, and so on. And how do you use these variables? How do I put data into it? And this is pretty easy. You use the assignment operator. Just like in maths, you'd say let x equals to 2. You can do the same here. You can do game score equals to, is equal to, and then a number. For example, 69. And then obviously this should follow by a semicolon, because remember, this is also an instruction. And we can also assign different values to the other variables. And look here, don't forget about the suffix, because if you do not put a suffix on a fraction point, then this will be considered as a double, and that's not going to happen. Okay, let's hit run. And oh boy, what is this? The literal of double cannot be implicitly converted, blah blah blah. So you need to understand, if you have studied physics, you should know a principle of homogeneity. The left hand side type should be equal to the right hand side type. Remember that for now. Okay, for now. The left hand side, particles per million, is a decimal type, and the right hand side is what type? I mean, you'd say it's not a variable, we don't know what type it is. No, it is a literal, it is a constant. It already has its own type. Since it's a fractional number, it should be either float, double, or decimal. And to differentiate between them, we look at the suffix. Since it does not have any suffix, this is a double. And in order to make this a decimal, you just add an m at it and you hit run. There we go. It's working now. You can check the output by simply typing console.writeLine and then name of the variable, but I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, let's try improperly assigning a variable. String name, and then Bob is equals to name. Okay, what's going to happen? We see an error. The left hand side of an assignment must be a variable. So left hand side should be a variable, not a value. So you cannot do the other way around. Now I'm going to do int score, and then I'm going to try setting the score to Bob. You know what's going to happen? It's going to say cannot implicitly convert string to int. So basically what's happening is that you're providing the variable called score, which only accepts int, a string. And what happens is that it says cannot implicitly convert type this, which is impossible basically. So yeah, you need to make sure that they're of the correct values. So suppose you have created a variable, you have also assigned a value to it, and now you need to use it. And how do you use it? Well, let's try outputting this on the screen. You know that to output to the screen, we use this function, right or right line, basically anything. And what do you type here? Obviously, you can't type in fever because it's not going to be a variable. You're not outputting a variable, you're outputting a literal constant. Well, it's pretty easy. You just type in the variable name, just like so. Remember, you don't put it inside the double quotes, because then this would be considered as a literal and it's going to print literally full name in there. Yeah, you don't want that. So if you remove the double quotes, then it's just going to consider this as a variable, and in place of this there will be this. So in place of full name, the compiler will replace fever. Good. So why would I want to do this? So for example, your code is running and the full name can change anytime. You can now easily change it. Fever dev. See, it's very easy to change it, and you can also change it inside the program. Full name. You can also reuse it. Fever 69 console dot write line full name. And as you can see, you can reuse the same variable again and again. All right, so let's do something else. Let's not assign anything, and let's try to print it. What? Maybe it's going to say something, maybe it's going to say nothing. And it's going to say use of unassigned local variables. So if you try to print empty variables, or you try to use variables which are empty, empty totally, nothing's been assigned to it, then you will get an error. So you need to assign it always. You can fix it is simply by assigning it something. You have to assign it something. You can even assign it empty spaces, like so. But what if you don't want to write this line? Well, there's a shortcut to this. You can do that in the same line over here, and it should work. And now the term for this should be actually different. Instead of declaring the variable, you are now initializing the variable, because you're making the variable in the same line and then you're giving the value to it in the same line. So that's the difference between declaration and initialization. These are two different words. And if you're giving it on the next line, if you're modifying the value of this variable, then this is called assigning the variable. There we go. So you should know how to create a variable and how to use it. Now what I have here is 3 different variables. The first one is full name, and this is a type string. The first one is choice, and the second one is a variable called choice, and this is a type char. Score with a type int. And what these are basically, these are called explicitly typed variables, because I have told it, the compiler, that I want these variables to be at the type of string. But what if I don't know the type, right? Back then we used to use literals, and if we didn't know what the literal value is, then you would use variables, right? But what if we don't know the type of it? Well, C# has a one cool feature. Instead of you giving the data type, C# compiler will automatically assign a proper type to it. For example, var full name. So if I don't know what is the type for this, then I would simply do that. So for example, we have a string called message, and the C# compiler will know that the message is a string. But what if we don't know that the message will be a string, right? Well, right now you are explicitly declaring that this will be string and this will remain string throughout the execution of the program. But what if you don't know that it's going to be string or not? So in that instance, what you could do is you can type in var, and this is called implicitly typed local variable. Implicitly typed local variable. And what it does is that whenever you assign a value to it, C# compiler will basically automatically decide the type for it. So if there's a So what it does, it will take the value on the right hand side, the data type, and then it will assign the same data type to the variable. Now one limitation of this is that you cannot declare it, you need to initialize it. For example, var score, you can't do it that way because it does not know what type it is going to take, and if you try to run it, it's going to throw in an error. Implicitly typed variables must be initialized. So that's the difference between explicitly typed variables and implicitly typed variables. Why use the var keyword? Well, it's really because of shortcut, or maybe you don't know what type you're going to be using, or you're prototyping basically. So this allows you to create dynamic program that sort of adapts to changes very easily. So next up is a challenge that you need to perform. All right, assignment time. So you got 3 different values that you need to display in this format. Hello Bob, you have 3 messages in your inbox. The temperature is 34.4 Celsius. You need to mix 2 different types of output functions that I've taught you back in chapter 1. And you also need to make sure that you correctly define the variables, properly declare it, and assign a value to it, and also properly use it. So how do you do that? Well, you do it. Now, I'd advise you to try it yourself, and if you get stuck, keep watching the video. Pause the video now and try it yourself. So if you're still watching, I'll assume that you got stuck, and now I'll show you the solution. So first thing we need to decide is what name to use. And if you look at the message, hello Bob, then Bob should be a name. So we'll just use the first name variable. You have 3 messages, so that should be a number of messages. So I guess we'll use the variable name messages count, and then the temperature is 34.4 Celsius. So we'll just use a name called temperature, and we do need to assign it a different type. So this is going to be name, so it's going to be string, and this is a number with this is a whole number, so this is going to be a int. And since this is a fractional point with very less precision, we will just consider this as a float. And we can also assign it right here, and this is called initializing, like I said. Let's do that right here because we know the values up front. And 34.4 degrees Celsius. Okay, so we need to output this out to the screen. So let's say console.write, because if I type in write line, and then I say hello space hello comma space, and then if I type in console.write line first name, then you can see here that oh, I forgot to put F here. Hello, and then it's going to add in a new space. You don't want that. Write line actually appends a new line to the end of the string literal, so you don't want that. You'd use write instead, so that it continues to it continues writing in the same line. Oh yeah. And then console.write that, and then you have space console. Oh, I got the C wrong here. Right. Message count console.write messages in your inbox. The temperature is console.write temperature console.write is space Celsius. Okay, so we hit run, we should have the correct output. There we go. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but you should have this type of output. All right, check your knowledge. go ahead and pause this video and try to complete this quiz. Okay, so if you're still watching, let's check our answers. Which of the following variant names should be or must be avoided? Well, this is possible. Okay, this cannot be. This should be avoided because it starts with a special character. What is the problem with this line of code? Var message. Now you're trying to implicitly create a variable. You're trying to create an implicitly typed variable and you're not assigning a value to it. So it does not know. Basically, you're not initializing it. Which of the following is the output of blah 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 34.40 M? Okay, so this is going to have a very high precision, so it's obviously not going to output the suffix with it, and since it has higher precision, I think that it's going to print this. Which of the following lines of code variable? It's a variable correctly. I think it's going to be this. Now this looks correct, however you can't set bool and you can't have quotes in bool. It needs to be false, and also the f cannot be capital. So check our answers and looks like everything's correct. So this one was quite confusing. You'd say that 0 is useless and you don't want that. However, m means the m suffix denotes that this literal is a decimal literal and you want this to be as accurate as it is. So that means it will store whatever value you give it. If you give it 34.40000, and it's going to output that many zeros out. So let's hit continue and unlock achievement. And yeah, basics for string formatting. Okay, so this one is a pretty interesting one. Let's get right into it. So as a software developer, you need to write C# code to combine different strings, because last time, remember, we typed in console.write so many times. Well, you don't have to type so many times. You can do that in one single line, and I'll teach you how to do that. It's pretty awesome. Escape sequences. Now, escape sequences are actually special instructions that are in the string itself. For example, we can be like, this is the first line, and then some kind of special instruction we give it here, and then this is the second line, and then when you run the code, when you try to output this, it is actually going to output this. Interesting. So how do we do that? That XXX that I've written there was actually a character escape sequence, and well, this is not actually literally the character escape sequence, but there's a special instruction that you can write over here. So let's see. Let's check out how to write a character escape sequences. So here's that, and then let's type in hello world. So this is going to simply print it in the same line. Okay. Let's try to use the escape sequence for the next line. And to do that, you need to type \n. And what it's going to print is it's going to print HELLO space, and then it's going to go to the next line, because this is not considered as a string, but this is considered as an instruction, which is called an escape instruction. And see, it's going to print it on the next line. And there's also another escape sequence called tab, and it is going to put some spaces between these two words. And as you can see, these are spaced farther apart, and I can add more tabs and stack them together so that they will stay even farther. It will be printed much farther, and you can do the same with the new line. I can spam this, and this will be printed way down there. Yeah. So this is how you basically format the string. What if you want to print double quotes itself? Double quotes. This is a double quote, and then I want to print a double quotes inside a double quotes. It's not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen. If we try to run it, it's going to say syntax 0. It's not going to understand that this double quote is actually not an enclosing quote, I guess, not an instruction or a part of, but a part of the string literal itself. So how do you do that? Well, you use escape sequences, and to do that you simply put in a backslash over here and backslash over here. So this is going to consider, oh okay, so this is the starting double quotes, and it's going to come over here, and oh, and it's going to check if this is the ending double quote, and it's going to see the slash over beside it, and that way it will ignore this. So and similarly, if you need to like output a path to a file for this C C drive source repos, unfortunately this console.writeline will, this compiler will think that this slash s is a escape sequence and this slash r is an escape sequence, and that's going to say, oh wait, I don't recognize this slash and slash r. So that is going to cause an error. How do you make sure that this is not a escape sequence? Well, it's pretty easy. In order to make sure that it ignores a slash, you put double slash like so, and when you do that, it's going to paste only a single slash. It's going to ignore it. So the use for this would be that you type something like this, and it would output, you know, in a good format, you know. So general blah blah blah, you got invoice blah blah blah, some space. If you didn't have these skip sequences, then it would look really ugly. Let's see. And if you try to output this now, this ugly line of output, see, it would be all congested. So that's great, but what if you don't want to use skip sequences? Yes, okay. Well, there are some cases that you don't want to use skip sequences. You want to type something and you want to make sure that it outputs exactly what you've typed in. Okay, so to do that, you make a verbatim literal. A verbatim string literal. And a string literal. So what's the difference between a verbatim string literal and a string literal? Well, string literal, if you type in this is first line slash n, this is second line, then it's going to print, you know, obviously in the second line, but this is not going to print in the second line if you type in the same thing. And let me show you that real quick. If I run it, okay, it's working. And if I try to make it a verbatim string literal, it's going to literally output whatever is inside here. As you can see, it literally pasted this slash n. But what if I want this to be in the second line? Well, it's pretty easy. You just put it in the second line like so, and see, it works. And if you put in like I don't know, 1 2 3 4 4 spaces, no, 4 spaces actually, that's quite a lot of spaces, and it's going to put that many spaces in between, and yeah, this is how it prints. So to make a verbatim literal, what you do is you got the double quotes, right? In front of the starting double quote, you add an @ here. And what it does is it's going to convert this string literal into a verbatim string literal, and it's going to paste exactly what you've written. There are called now unique escape characters. Let's check it out. So this is a unique character sequence. /u is actually called a Unicode character escape sequence, and what it does is it's going to literally go into the dictionary, and it's going to pick out the word. It's going to take the letter that's at 3053 and 3093, 306b, 3061, 306f. Okay, it's going to take out letter from there, and apparently these letters are Japanese letters. Let's try putting random numbers here and see what we get. So apparently this was a bracket here. Interesting. 301e. This was a okay, a double quotes, I guess. Let's say 3069 because nice. But you know, there are some limitation to this. Your console should be able to print it out. If it does not support your Unicode basically the font, if it does not support the dictionary, or if it does not have that particular letter for this, for example this particular letter in the dictionary, then it is not going to output anything. It's going to simply output question marks. So that is because it does not support that Unicode sequence character. So here's another example, and let's see another example over here. So there is a verbatim string literal, and here's some escape sequences in play, and so on. And here are some Japanese Unicode characters. Okay, so let's take a look at string concatenation. What is string concatenation? Well, it's just a fancy term used for combining different strings. For example, you have different strings. This is string 1, this is string 2, and you need to, like, for example, if you need to output them at the same line, you'd do this, right? You'd put this one in the console.write function and basically output them in same line, or these two different strings in the same line. But you can also do this in a single line using only one instruction. And to do that, you take this and then you put it over here. And the way to do string concatenation, which is just fancy name for joining two strings, is you use the concatenation operator, which is basically the plus sign. And if you do that, you'll add these two strings together. They will basically join together. See? Nice. You can also do the same with variables. Plus, and you could do name, and it's going to combine this string literal and then this variable with the value Bob, and it's going to output my name is Bob. Let me remove this first one. My name is Bob. You can also combine different variables. So you could be like first name Bob, last name Bobby, and obviously don't forget the semicolon, because if you do forget the semicolon, you'll be reminded that semicolon expected is an error there. And then you could combine these two together, first name plus last name. And there's no limit to how many concatenation operators you can use. You can also combine literals. My full name is plus, and then let's put a space there. My full name is Bob Bobby, and I don't like this, there's no space in between. Well, I can fix that easily by adding a empty space literal right there. And there we go. So there's really no limits to how many string concatenations you can use. Yeah. Okay. But this is quite, quite tedious to add in plus every time you do this. What if there was an easy way to do it? What if there was an easy way that you could just simply put this all in a string literal? My full name is first name and last name. And somehow the compiler replaced this two with the contents of the variable, then that would be really nice. So doing this is actually called, okay, so this technique is called string interpolation. A prefix over here called the dollar. So last time we added the added prefix for verbatim string literal, and for string interpolation you add a dollar. Okay, let's try running it. Okay, it didn't work. Why it didn't work? Well, this is actually considering the first name and last name as part of the string literal, and we didn't actually tell it that this is not a string, but instead these things are variables. And to do that, you simply write these in a, this. You simply write them in a curly braces. And that way you can make sure that this will be replaced by the actual values itself. And don't worry about the curly braces. They will remove. And see, that's way easier. And you can also combine this with verbatim literal. So for example, if you want the verbatim literal features here, then you can type in add that here, and you could be like, my first name is over here, and then one could be way over here, and so on. So you don't actually have to use strings every time. You can also output other different types of data types. So for example, we got int, score, and then you have console dot write line. The score is plus score. Okay, so what just happened over here is that this is a string and this is an int. And if you try to combine them together, and it looks at this operator and it says, okay, so we have a int here, so maybe we have to add two numbers together. But however, it's going to see string here. The way that plus operator works in a string is that it combines it, right? Joins two different things together. So which one is going to happen? And obviously you can't add a number to the score is string, obviously. However, you can add the number, you can join the number to the string. And that is what the C# compiler will try to do. It will try to convert this into a string and then join it here. Now remember, this will still remain an int, but on this line, this will be treated as a string, basically. If we try to run it, 5. The score is 5. See there? This is now considered, this score here in this line is actually considered as a string. And you'll know this because if we have another score 2 and then 5, then if we try to do plus score 2, and then we would expect that these would sort of add together, 5 plus 5, 10, and we would expect the score is 10. However, that's not going to happen. It's going to say 5 5. And yeah, that looks like 55 to us, but in reality it's actually 5 5. So what just happened? So if you try to do it this way, it will try to go from left to right, and then it's going to first see a string. Okay, so if it's a string, then it's going to treat everything else as a string. So if you need to actually do some mathematical operations here, then you need to actually put it in a bracket here if you want this to be happening first. So if you put it in a bracket, you can see that it's going to say 10 now, because it's going to first add these two together, and then whatever the result will be, it will convert that into string. And this method, this process of converting one data type into another by C# is called implicit casting. Okay, this phenomenon is called implicit casting, because the C# compiler is automatically trying to determine the best type casting. You can also do explicit casting. For example, you have a float of 8.5 and you want this to be an int. Why int? Let's see. Oh, I forgot the name of the variable. Can't forget the name of the variable. Number, wait, bands, and then bands. Here 8.5. So what if I don't want this 0.5? What if I don't want the decimal at all? Well, you can explicitly cast it as a integer so that it will ignore the decimal point, and you can do that over here before printing it out. So let me do that right here. Before that, let me do one thing. Console.writeLine. We'll do the same string concatenation over here as well. Bands, and I'm going to explicitly cast this as a int. So as a int, this will be now band. Okay, nothing happened. Why did we still get 0.5 as a int? Integers don't have points or fractional numbers. They are whole numbers. Well, it's because we didn't do this properly. To explicitly cast something, you need to add in a bracket. You need to open up a new bracket over here, parenthesis, and then you need to give it a type. So if I do that, then it's going to take this bands, which is a float and has a value of 8.5. It's going to convert it into an int, and then it's going to convert into a string and then combine here. And if you do that, it will chop off any fractional point. And this is how you basically chop off fractional points. You can do the same the other way around. So if you have an int and you have a number over here, and you can also do this as a float, cast this as a float, and then this as an int, and you'd see that it is it's basically the same. Usually you can also do this with other different types of data. For example, decimal. You have decimal over here, and it's a pretty accurate one. So it and as a decimal and as a float, you'd see that you do lose some precision right over here as a decimal and float, and you can do that to convert one form into another form only if it is possible. Okay, sometimes it's just simply not possible. So string interpolation allows you to easily create join different variables, so you don't need to use the plus more often. Okay, so you have a new challenge over here. You need to take this and then you need to format them. So if you try to hit run, nothing happens obviously, but however you need to make sure that you output this. That's actually pretty easy. So first thing we need to do is we need to output this out, and to do that we'll just use verbatim literals, because it's very easy. Console.write add rate, and then hold on, I think I want console.write line, and then add it for verbatim literal, and then just paste that. Bam. So I have the first one ready, and the second one is going to be this right here. Okay, so we have a variable here, so we'll need string interpolation at the same time as the verbatim one. So console.write line, and then add the rate dollar, or you can do the same thing other way around. And then let's see, so we want to do view Russian output, and then no, this is not actually that. We need to output Russian message over here, and then we need to output this. Okay, yeah, there we go, it is working. You can also add a space over here if you want. Yeah, yep. Okay, so here's another quiz. Try to solve it yourself, pause the video, and then come back when you want to check the answers. Okay, I think you have done this. I think you have answered all the questions now, and let's move on to answering this. Which of the following escape sequences should be used to add double quotes to a literal string in C#? Double quotes should be this double quote, not the single one, and then the skip. Q is nothing actually. Which of the following lines of code correctly uses string interpolation? So string interpolation is that we need a dollar in front, okay, and these are verbatim ones, so obviously they'll be wrong. Unicode characters are embedded in C# for a console application to present a greeting message in Thai. Okay, so we're trying to output some Thailand messages, Thai messages, right? But we have got question marks. So that's probably because it doesn't support it. So the following lines of code appends a single slash to the string dictionary. Well, if it's a single slash, you'd obviously use single quotes. However, it's not going to happen because this will be considered as a escape sequence, and that's going to cause issues. This is also not possible because, well, it's not going to happen. This is also not possible because this is also considered as a escape sequence. This is possible because this is a verbatim literal, and that it is going to attach literally a slash over to the dictionary. All right, mathematics in C#. Take a look at how you can do maths in C#. So the first exercise is to perform addition with implicit data conversion. Okay, so how do you add two numbers together? It is very easy. Let's get two number literals out. So this will be one addition operator, and then the next one, I guess two here. So we can add two different number literals together like so. We can also add float literals like so, and we can also add variables together. You can also store them in a different variable and then paste C instead. Yep. Okay, so let's take a look at math operators. This is how you add something, this is how you subtract something, this is how you multiply something, and this is how you divide something. So multiplication is actually a star instead of an x. Don't be confused. Don't use an x here. 7 times 5 is not 7x5. It's actually 7 star 5 or 7 asterisk 5. You type that by pressing shift and then 8. And then this is a front slash. Okay, so let's hit run. There we go. It's working. So how you do basic maths. Okay, so there is one more operator here called the remainder operator. This is called a modulus operator, and you can use this to get the remainder of something. For example, console dot right line 5 remainder 2 is, so basically if 2 times 2 is 4, and then if you minus that, then you'll get 1 remainder basically. So how do you use this? Is you would use this to check if the number is divisible or not. So if the answer is 0, then 5 is completely divisible by 2, but that is not the case here. It's 1, so it's not actually completely divisible. Order of operations. Usually in Asia we study by using the BODMAS rule. That's brackets of divide multiply. However, we don't use this way in the C#, unfortunately. Microsoft made this. Microsoft in USA, and American kids learn it as PEMDAS. So that's going to be parentheses, the brackets first, anything inside the brackets, exponents. So that's going to be power, multiplication, divide, addition, and subtraction. Basically, it's the other way around here. I'm not going to teach you how to do exponents right now, but there's something else. So you can test the order of operation here. So 3 plus 4 is so 4 5 20, and then 20 plus 3 should be 23, and the second one 3 plus 4 7 15. So this would be 23, this would be 35. So just remember that. Or you can, if you want to have some operations done at first, you just use the bracket symbol. Increment and decrement. So if you got a variable over here and you want to increase this by 1, you simply type in score plus plus, and this is called an increment operator, the plus plus one, and it's going to increase the value by 1. We can check that right here, 1, because it was 0 at first. We can also use this again, and then let's try to output this again, and we'll see 1 2. Okay, we didn't output this on this different line, so it actually showed the same line, 1 2. And then you can also stack this for additional effect. So this will go add it 4 times, but that's very inefficient. So instead you just type in score equals to score plus 4. You can do it either that way, or you could do it like this as well. So the operator and then that. So what's the difference between this and this? Well, it's basically a term. The result are basically the same. These are called compound assignment operators, because they actually assign and do some operations as well in the same line. And these are simply assignment operators, but you're just doing a little bit of fancy formula here. You can also do the same with subtraction and other different operations. You can also do multiplications and division right here. One such example would be right over here. So first the value is 1, the value is increased by 1, first increment 2, so also increased by 1 over here, 3. This is how you increase, and so on. And this is how you decrease the value. Different ways of decreasing basically. But the plus plus or the minus minus, unique ones that can be placed before or after the variable. So for example, int score goes to 0, and then if you do console dot write score plus plus and then hit run, you still see 0 because it's going to first do something here and then add it. So if we try to output it over here now, see what happens. Okay, that's interesting. So what just happened here? What just happened here? Well, if you put the plus plus or the the operator at the end, then what it's going to do is first it's going to use the old value once it uses the old value, it will add in. Challenge time. Write a program to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, so let me first give you a context about how to do that, and then you try to write the code. So today's challenge is to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, or write a program that does that conversion. And here's a bit of background information before you go ahead and do it. You receive a value. Make sure you store the Fahrenheit temperature in a variable, and then to convert it into Celsius, you first need to subtract 32 and then multiply by 5/9. So 5 by 9, a fraction. And then you need to display the result like this. The temperature is blah, blah, blah Celsius. Okay. So ideally, you don't want to have such a long value. Try to have something that is short and sweet. Try it yourself, and if you do get stuck, or if you do complete it, then continue watching this video. Okay, so if you're still watching this video, I will assume that you have completed this assignment or that you have got stuck. So let's do this. First thing we need to do is store the Fahrenheit in some kind of a variable, Fahrenheit. And then, since this is the first operation that needs to be performed before multiplication or division, we need to make sure that we put this in the bracket. And then we need to multiply this by 5 by 9. And we need to store the result in a variable, I guess. So let's make it a float. Celsius, I guess. And then we just need to output the Celsius out. So console.writeLine, and the temperature is, I'm just doing the lazy way. You could do string interpolation as well. It's really your choice, but I just feel like this is much easier to do. And then if we hit run, we have a error here. Okay, 0 Celsius. We didn't. Okay, so what happened here? Well, something happened. This is considered as an int here. Okay, and what we need to do is we need to consider this as a float instead, or else this division will not happen properly. If you try to divide 5 by 9 in an integer, then if you're not allowed to use any type of points, then it will obviously return 0, and then anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So this is what just happened. So let's make it a float so that we get this answer in point and decimal point, and then we can actually perform the operation. And okay, Fahrenheit is assigned, but its value is never used. Right. Fahrenheit, and we forgot a semicolon right there, and there we go. We now have this knowledge check. Try to solve these quizzes by yourself, and then come back when you want to check your answers. Pause the video now. Following lines of code will fail to output Windows 11. So this will output Windows 7 plus 7 4. This will output Windows 1 1, so that will be 11. This will be, this will fail to output that. What is the value of the form result? So that's going to be 1 into 5 divided by 2. So that would be 2.5. However, since this is an int, it will be 2. So 3 plus 2 is 5. There we go. If you didn't understand what I just said, 1 multiplied by 5 is 5, and according to the PEMDAS rule, we need to divide first. So 5 divided by 2 would be 2.5 ideally, but since it's an int and every number over here was an int, we'd get an int result, and that will return 2.5. However, since that was an int result, we need to ignore the decimal point and just use 2 instead, and then that would be 5. What will be the result of the following line of code? Console.writeLine 5 divided by 10. It would fail to divide essentially, because ideally the answer would be 0.5, but since this is an int, this is also an int, and the question is int, then the answer will also be an int, so we'll get a 0 as an answer. Which of the following lines of code is the addition assignment operator? That would be this addition assignment operator. Oh, I forgot something. There we go. As the title suggests, today we'll be creating a GPA calculator. We will calculate and print the student's GPA. So go ahead and visit the Microsoft website and hit start. So a bit of our background information. You'll be performing some calculations, and you'll be basically outputting them using the output functions that I've taught you at the beginning of the lesson, and also using some of the extra knowledge regarding string manipulation, such as string interpolation and verbatim strings on the way. So by the end of this exercise, you'll be able to create a simple project. So a bit of an overview on the project itself. You'll be given a short list of 4 students and their 5 assignment grades. And each assignment grade is expressed as an integer value 0 to 100, where 100 represents 100% correct. So basically, sort of a marks obtained on that subject. Final score are calculated as an average of 5 assignment scores. So you just find the average of 5 subjects grade, and then that should give us a final score on the final grade. And we need to be able to perform basic mathematical operations in order to get this. And then at the end, your application needs to output and display each student's name and final score. Here's the data, and here's the score that you need to output in this format. Now, I haven't taught you how to give GPA score, how to grade a student based on their GPA or their score. So you'll just be hard coding these inside. So you'll just be hard coding these values in. So let's get started. So first thing first, we do need to input these values. So you can go ahead and copy this into this code editor here. And then you can start creating the project. Pause the video right now and try to do it yourself. If you get stuck, then unpause the video, watch it how I did. But I would recommend to try this yourself. If you're still watching, I will assume that you have completed your assignment or that you have got stuck. So let's do this. So we have a current assignment count, basically a variable. And then first, let's try to calculate Sophia's grade. To do that, we'll create a new variable called Sophia. Float, because remember, some of these final scores are actually in decimal points. And I think with the float being the lowest precision, this should be enough. So float Sophia equals to, and then we could just need to add all of them together. So that would be Sophia 1 plus Sophia 2. All right, I'm going to actually teach you how to type this all very quickly, and it's actually really awesome. You can use shortcuts. So see how it is really tedious to type in this Sophia 1 2 3 4 5, and trying to use the autocomplete is also even more tedious. Like you have to type in SOP, and then it's sort of finally suggest you something and you need to select it. That takes too much time. You can actually do it this way. Hold on. So you could do float Nicholas equals to, and then you could type in N1, and then it's going to automatically predict that you're trying to write Nicholas 1. So if you let me first put this in a bracket, N1 Nicholas 1, N2 Nicholas 2, N3 Nicholas 3, and 4 Nicholas 4, and 5 Nicholas 5. Technically you wouldn't want to do this way, but since we haven't finished other chapters and we don't really have a complete understanding of C#, we just have to work with what we know. And do the same with the Zaria and Zeong and calculate their final grade. Now that we have calculated all of the scores of all of the students and their subjects, we can go ahead and create a console.write method, and we'll be using a verbatim literal plus some string interpolation, so we can format this correctly. And let's see. So let me put a semicolon right there, and then student, and then we do a tab here, grade. Okay, let's put double tabs here actually. Yeah. and then Sophia, and then Jeong. There we go. And we can go ahead and run this. And we should, okay, okay, yeah. We need to, we just did it the wrong side. Okay, apparently you can't mix them up. Okay. And there we go. Okay, what just happened? Let's not use verbatim literal. Okay, what just happened? Yeah, this all needs to be on the same line, seems like, huh? Yeah. Yep. Okay, I can do that. Let's just do that and then do a new line here. Okay, that should work. Yeah, okay. Actually, we didn't receive some. Okay, so we just made a mistake here. We only got 94 and we're supposed to get 94.6. Somehow the 0.6 got chopped off because we divided with the wrong number. Okay, we received a wrong input. So just convert this into float, I guess, and then F. And there we go. Okay, so this is the next guided project and we'll be building up on the previous code to calculate the final GPA of different students. So make sure you have the prior knowledge before you start this because you will require to use the things that you've learned up until now. So let's hit continue and move ahead for this guided project. So apparently you're given student name and class information. Each class has a name, the student's grade, and the number of credit hour for that class. And okay, so we need to apply some kind of formula, then we can calculate the GPA. Okay, and so the formula for that is multiply the grade. Okay, first thing first, let's set everything up. Let's get the data in. And how do we calculate this? Final GPA. Okay, so it might be a float, obviously, because we can see that it's a decimal number and it's a fraction. So there we go. And then now it will be final GPA. Let's name it final GPA. And then let's check the formula out. Multiply the grade value for a course by the number of credit hour for that course. So first thing we need to do is we need to multiply the course credit and the grade. So how much grade did we even receive? It's not given there. Okay, I mean, we could just go ahead and hardcore this out, and that's probably what I'll do. But you know what? Let's just make variables for this. So grade, bam, course one, grade. So let me copy that so I can quickly replace this. Bam, 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 and then the grade would be 4, 3, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 3 threes and I'm gonna 4. And then final GPA is basically multiply the grade value for a course by the number of credit hour for that course. So that would be course 1 credit, course 1 grade, and then do this for each course and add these results together. Okay, so we need to do this for each and every courses. So I would advise copying and pasting this, I guess. So let's just do that. Put another parenthesis so that this will be taken as a whole, you know. So we'll take this as a whole and then we'll divide this by the total credit hour. So that would be credit C1C plus, hold on, let me put this in a bracket too so we don't make any type of calculation mistake. C2C to C, there we go. Add a semicolon at the end, and then we just need to sort of display this out. I guess I'm just gonna go with normal console.write. Just not very comfortable with using that student, but I guess I will use string interpolation right here. just because why not. Student name, and then shit, what did I do? Console dot write line. That's gonna add an empty space. That's like the worst thing to do, but yeah. Course, and then double tab, I guess. Okay, so there we go. And okay, this is bad. I don't want so many spaces here, do I? There we go, much better. Okay, so yeah, we need an extra line over there. There we go, it's working. Actually, final GPA, we only got what, 3. What? So okay, let me fix that. We just need to check where is the problem. So basically, to try to fix this issue, what you can do is you can go to the divisor part, so the one after the slash. You can try explicitly casting this into float and seeing if that solves the problem, and yep, that did. And we should have the final GPA. Yay. Okay, you can do it anyway. So apparently the way Microsoft did it is by doing it one by one, and that kind of makes the code really long. You could also do it my way, but you know, I always write really dirty code, but I also tend to write the shortest one. So yeah, this is one of the shortest solution. Do all the calculation in one go. For example, this is your code editor and you have tab spaces in fixed interval of, you know, lines, and usually these are fixed. So like if you were to type in something, suppose something, and then you type in /t, then this cursor would move to this tab space, okay, this tab line. And then if you were to add in one more t, then it would move to this one first and then the next one. So what happened was that if I wrote sum and then /t, so the nearest tab space to this e is this one, so it's the cursor is going to move to this one, so over here. And if there was only s over here and then one /t, you know, one tab space, then the closest tab is to the s is this one, so it still is going to go towards this next one. However, if we had something that, you know, sort of exceeded the first tab space, then a tab space would not actually go over here, but instead it's going to move the cursor way over here. And that was what was happening because this one subject was pretty long and it ended up pushing the other remaining output way far down the line because I had too many tab spaces put there. Okay, there's a quiz here, try this and then come back when you do it. Suppose decimal grid point blah blah blah. What is the value of int blah blah? Well, it's just going to be 3 because it's going to chop off all of this. And actually, hold on. This might seem like it would be easier to just simply round it up to 4 because that's what we do usually in real life. But no. Computers don't do that. They don't have mercy. So they're going to chop that point from the decimal point. It's not going to care if it's like 999 really close to 4. Nope. You're going down to 3 GPA. In the following code, decimal x is equal to 7 divided by 5. So why does x equals to 1? Well, it's because this is an integer. Dividing two integers performs integer division. That is correct. Okay, you have two integers and when you divide them you will receive an integer answer. Technically this would result in 5.125 or something. I'm not sure exactly, but since this results in an integer answer, the point part is cut off and then you only are left with only 1 as an answer. And there we go, that's going to be the answer. Let's take it out. Oh no, that's going to be 3. I explained it so much, still I made a mistake here. Trophy time, folks, trophy time. So first thing what we are going to do is we are going to link the Microsoft account to the free code camp so that this website can verify the trophy that you have earned. So right now, as you can see, I have earned a trophy. And when we go to this website over here, Using browser where logged in Microsoft, go to this is transcript. Okay, let's see. This is my transcript, and I've studied. Okay, hold on. So share link, and then copy the link, and then paste this link over here, and then link ID. Now that you've, okay, there we go. And once you link it, it's going to verify the trophy. How did it not work? Yeah, there we go. It was just a issue. Nice done. You just donate now to help. Sorry, I don't have a PayPal because my country does not allow making a PayPal ID. Sorry, no foreign transaction here in Nepal. And Patreon, I need PayPal for that. I can't make a credit card, so screw this. Maybe if I go to a foreign country, yeah, sure, I will donate you. Just wait for me because I've been doing this non-stop. Okay, so you've just finished the chapter 1 of the foundational course. Don't be yeah, so don't get too excited because you still have 1 2 3 4 5 6 5 more chapters to go, and then you can finally take the foundation CSAP certification exam, and then you can receive the certification. So I'm thinking about making one video each chapter, because like I'm unable to render such a huge video at once. I'll have the other chapter videos coming up very soon, so make sure you stay tuned. Subscribe, rate the video if you like it, and if you don't like it, dislike it, and do let me know what you think in the comment section below about how I can improve this course video. And also, if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section. Maybe I can help you out, or maybe some of you guys who are currently following the course can help you out. So yeah, see you in the next video.